remember the drive down I-75 that morning was very quiet. There was no communications on the radio. There was no dispatch. I'm sure, like me, everybody else was probably trying to understand what was happening. Within a short period of time, I made it to our operations center in Ybor City and was going up the main stairwell to our offices. And the first person that I spoke to was one of my best friends since elementary school, who I had the pleasure of working with. And while he worked with us in law enforcement, he also served our country as a captain in the Army Reserve. And his duty assignment was Army Intelligence at CENTCOM. We didn't exchange a word at first. I could tell by the look in his eyes it was going to be a bad day. He just told me, he says, I don't know what's going on, but I've been summoned to base. And once he got there, he was activated and put back on active duty. And I didn't see him for 2 years. His wife didn't see him for 2 years. His kids didn't see him for 2 years. After me and Rick left, I remember walking into my commander's office and I saw him watching television. I walked in to see what I thought was a replay of the plane crashing in the World Trade Center. Only then did I realize it wasn't a replay, but I was watching live coverage as the second plane hit. And before my eyes, I got to witness the death of hundreds. The rest of the day was a blur. Many of us were assigned to provide 24-hour, 7-day-a-week patrols all over Hillsborough County, from the airport to the port to even power stations. Nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew what the next target was. We just knew that we had to try to get out there and try to get in front of them. This posture would go on for weeks. In the evening of September 12th, I finally made it home to see my family and went to my in-laws for dinner. As I walked in, I remembered my father-in-law wasn't eating. Instead, was sitting in the living room watching the news of the ongoing rescue at that point of Ground Zero. He was quiet, turned towards me and said, "Glad you're okay." And I noticed a tear coming down his cheek. Long pause. He said, "I prayed you kids would never have to see this ever happen in my world." You see, when he was 17 years old, when Pearl Harbor was attacked, he was just a kid out of school. A month later, he was in the Army. And 2 months later, he was on a troop ship headed to Europe. He never said it, but I'm sure he clearly hoped the world would become a better place. And when he realized on September the 11th, 2001, it hadn't, and he was taken back to that day as a 17-year-old, when innocence left his life. Days progressed into weeks, into months, and I know we all became used to watching the work at Ground Zero each and every day. We watched his activity was stopped when someone was found, paid honor and respects. Life was different from that day forward. As the days, weeks, and months passed, our new normal came into focus. Terms like TSA, DHS, and watch list were included and inserted into our vocabularies. Even today, I'm reminded of the tragedy of what occurred and the sacrifices still being paid by our heroes then and our heroes now. As you know, I'm retired law enforcement, but I'm still heavily involved in groups supporting the families of fallen law enforcement. And I'm reminded of 9/11 several times a year when I see a notification of a line of duty death that simply says, "Died as a result of 9/11 associated medical condition." I'm going to leave you with this final thought. I was reminded by a friend of mine who was in federal law enforcement on September 11th, 2001, in Manhattan, and was assigned to Ground Zero for several months to assist with the long recovery of victims. Recently, he told me, since retiring, I know I was exposed to some bad stuff being at Ground Zero. Quite frankly, I'm not going to live as long as you, Alan. I don't expect to live a full life, and I don't expect to get to enjoy all of my retirement. Like others, he knows one day he will receive a diagnosis that will ultimately result in his death. But when I asked him, I said, knowing what you know now, would you still go in? No hesitation, he said yes. I was able to have a longer life than those who were in those buildings, those on those planes, those that came to rescue that day, and those who have given their lives to fight in a faraway land since. So if the work I did at Ground Zero helped bring closure for a loved one, family, or friend, it was worth it. So why are we taking time out of your day to remember? Please help us keep the memories alive of those who have passed and those who will probably pass one day in the future. And let's not let their memories be in vain. Keep the memory of 9/11 alive. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity. God bless you.